Welcome back to Blatantly Honest with Makaila Nichols. Today, I sat down with Jethro Jones, a former principal. He's been recognized in the field of education and has even won the 2017 NASSP Digital Principal of the Year. Now, Jethro hosts Transformative Principal, a podcast series where he interviews principals, leaders, and influencers who help improve K-12 education throughout the world. Jethro is also an author of the book SchoolX, How Principals Can Design a Transformative School Experience for their students, teachers, parents, and even themselves. Jethro is truly making an impact on the world of education. So happy to have you on the show. Did you ever think that you were going to be involved with education and becoming a principal?
For pretty much my whole life, I thought that I would be a teacher. As a kid growing up, I always thought I'd want to work with kids. Thought I'd be a pediatrician. I had a hard situation where I threw my nephew over my head, and he hit the ground and got the air knocked out of him. And I said, "Okay, I can't watch kids suffer." So I went into education, and then I saw lots of kids suffer in lots of different ways. So that was unfortunate, but I avoided it for a long time because I knew teachers couldn't make money, and I wanted to have a lot of kids, wanted my wife to stay home. And then eventually I said, I'll just do it. And so I became a teacher, didn't graduate in education, but was able to find a job anyway. And that was a kind of unique thing.
Oh, incredible. Not incredible that you had to watch kids suffer because that's really horrible. Not very fun, but amazing that you were like, I'm going to put a stop to this suffering and I'm going to do this. So my mom taught preschool. I don't know if I told you that. So she has patience up the wazoo. Do you have just a heap load of patience?
It's funny, for kids who are not my own kids, I certainly do. And I, early in my career, I probably yelled at kids more than I needed to. Once I became a principal, I really was able to completely stop that practice and haven't yelled at kids who aren't my own kids for a very long time, because I realized that kids are going through whatever they're going through, and they don't need somebody yelling at them to get their attention. I found that I can get kids to do the things that I want by treating them with respect and being kind to them. And that gets them to do what I need them to do more often than anything else.
Do you think that teachers, because I remember being in class and there was always that one kid and he's always getting screamed at? Because if it was me, if I was teaching, yikes, I would probably be pretty aggressive because I wouldn't know how to do that. Do you find that kids just don't respond well at all to being yelled at?
Well, when it's about control and you want them to do what you want, yelling can be very effective. However, what I found is that when you want them to become the kind of people you want them to become, yelling is not an effective way to do it. I want kids to make the right choice because it's the right choice, not because somebody's watching. And so that doesn't always happen. But I have to say that I was that kid who was always getting yelled at. In fact, in ninth grade, I was flirting with a girl sitting in front of me, and my teacher thought that I was sexually harassing her. And so she said that I was kicked out of all the honors classes because I quote unquote sexually harassed this girl. And I was just flirting with her. But this teacher was so frustrated by how much I was the class clown and was, just subverting everything that she did, that she just couldn't handle it. And she took it personally that I was flirting with this girl and saw that as her opportunity to really get me. And so she made a huge negative impact on me because she wanted to control me, not because she wanted me to stop being inappropriate in class, but because she wanted me to stop being inappropriate in her class. And there was a difference between those two things. She didn't want me to make the right choices because they were the right choices. She wanted me to do what she wanted.
I'm so sorry you had to experience that. Uh, that's just not ever right to put a child literally in ninth grade in that kind of situation for flirting. That's when you're in your feels and whatnot. And I think teachers kind of at some points can forget that. And I experienced some kind of teacher bullying myself. It was only two of my teachers. All my other teachers, amazing, love them to death, still friends with us, to this day. And I remember the same thing. It was all about control. Do you think that this kind of control mindset really dominates the schools nowadays?
I wouldn't say that it dominates the schools, but there are certain teachers for sure and certain principals who are all about control. And education is very much a control system. We're teaching you how to behave, how to act, how to think, how to learn, how to complete assignments. All that stuff is very much about control. So I wouldn't say that the schools are dominated by that control type personality. However, there are a lot of teachers who are in it for that, and it's really unfortunate because it doesn't have to be that way. And there are different ways to get kids to make good choices besides that.
I think so too. I think when I think of a teacher, I think of someone who just loves kids and loves being there for the kids and they want to see them grow. And exactly what you were saying, like you want to be that difference in that kid's lives. And I think that is so commendable. Now, you keep seeing all these things. And me personally, I see all these things on the news of, either whether it's a relationship or someone's being aggressive to a kid. I mean, how do you pick out those bad eggs? I mean, how do they get in there in the first place?
Well, let's answer the second part first. They get in there because it's really easy to become a teacher because honestly, lots of schools are desperate. And especially right now, there's a teacher shortage. And there's the old adage that people who can't do teach. I think that's a bunch of baloney, but a lot of people believe that. And so they want, they say if you're not good at something else, then you go become a teacher. And that's really the wrong mindset as a society. We really need to have people who care about kids and care about kids being successful as the main driver of why people go into education. And for a lot of people, that's the case. One of the other challenges is that people who were good in school are often good at school are often the ones who become the teachers. And so kids who were very good at following directions, doing what they were told, acing all the tests and everything, then want to continue that. And so then they know what good education looks like because they were successful at it and they try to put that on the kids that are in front of them. And so that's not necessarily the best way to do it because not all kids are like that. And when you have a group of kids who are like that and very much teacher pleasers and want to do everything perfectly how the teacher wants, then that's all well and good, but those are few and far between. and and so you need to be able to find a way to support them. What I think we need to do in education is we need to find people who really care about improving the lives of kids, who have an incredible amount of patience and who want to support kids, not just get kids to do what they tell them to do. And that's a hard thing to look for.
Definitely a hard thing to look for. I know me personally, like thinking about becoming a teacher, if I ever did, I'm like, wow, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know what grade I could teach. I think there's so many things that go into this. And especially now in the time we're in, we need teachers now more than ever. Especially, you hear moms and dads getting on like, oh my God, I have so much more respect for my teachers. And it's like, yeah, hello, like I'm taking care of your kid, I'm teaching your kid. And, people just need to have more respect for teachers. So, with that being said, I've noticed just from speaking at different schools and really kind of being in the atmospheres of a school is so different based on where you're at and who you're talking to. And some parents believe that there is such disconnect with the school and their students. Why do you think that is?
Well, to be honest, schools are not designed for kids. Schools are designed for the adults. And so everything that we do in schools is set up to make life easier for the adults. It's not set up to optimize for learning. It's not set up to optimize for student success. It's set up to make it easier. So let's talk about grades, for example. Grades make it easy for a teacher to say who gets it and who doesn't. And they're completely arbitrary. They're completely made up in every situation. When I was a teacher, we were encouraged to give extra credit to our students for bringing in canned food for the food drive in November and December because we wanted to win the food drive. And so we gave extra credit. So for some kids, to be honest, an A meant that they brought in more food than other kids in their class. Now, that's just crazy when you think about it. But what you realize is that every teacher makes up her own way of grading, her own way of weighting grades and what is important and what's not. And because grades mean everything to everyone, they mean absolutely nothing. And but that is an optimization to support the adults in the school. And I believe we really need to do is design our schools around the needs of the kids that are there in front of us. So instead of, starting out saying, okay, here's our school and we're going to follow these standards, we need to look at the kids that are there and recognize that they may be in a different place and say what would be much more effective, for example, instead of giving kids grades, would be measuring kids on the growth they have in a certain content area. That would be much more beneficial. That's still not good enough for me, though. I think that we need to move school to much more of a student-driven approach where the kids are the ones who are saying, this is what I'm interested in, and the teachers are following behind saying they marked off this standard and this standard and this standard by doing this thing that they are interested in. I've done that in my schools, and it actually works, and kids actually learn much more that way than if the teacher could have ever put a lesson plan together to try to teach them those things.
That's so powerful. I think, especially, I mean, when you hear your parents talk about school, and when my parents, they're like, what the heck are you learning? Like, this is math. And like, there's a million ways to do something. And it just doesn't make sense. But it's like, that's how you have to do it for that particular teacher. And then it's like, it's out the door, bye-bye, forgotten the next day. How do you think the education is going to go through that shift as the system and as a whole? Because it seems nearly impossible because there's so many schools, so many kids, so many teachers. Like, what will it take for the education system to adapt?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's taking a pandemic right now to make it happen. So, because of this, we've seen teachers, and this is where the amazing teachers have really shown through, and they have changed on a dime and just done things completely differently to meet the needs of not being able to see their kids in person. And that's happening all over the place. And it happened when all the schools shut down in the spring. But then there were teachers who have just taken everything they did in class, and now they're just doing it online. And really, not much has changed except we're not all in the same place anymore. So, I've seen how some teachers have really risen to the occasion and shown that they're really there for kids, and have really changed what they're doing to meet the needs of their kids. And that's an important thing for people to recognize. Those teachers, we need to honor, support, help however we can, because they are really driving the charge for our kids to be successful. And right now, I'm seeing a lot of that change in schools because of the pandemic.
Yeah, who would have thought it would take a pandemic for this to happen? I mean, I know I didn't. I wish it didn't happen, but I mean, I think this might be the shift as far as education goes that we kind of needed for kids to be able to learn on their own and go at their own pace and have, this more not stronger relationship with technology, but just more adaptive, I guess would be the proper term. So, with that being said, adaptive learning and being on technology is a little bit different because teachers, when it comes to domestic violence at home and bullying at home and incidents at home, I mean, teachers used to be able to go into the classroom, see the kids, see if there was something wrong with their arm or see if they were acting weird. I mean, how is that really going to impact these kids not being able to have the teacher as kind of their first line of defense?
Yeah, I think that's a real scary situation because there are kids who could go to school and get away from that abuse, and now they can't. And if the parent is sitting, on the other side of the camera, they don't have the opportunity to have a confident, charismatic adult that they can confide in. And J.C. Pohl uses that phrase, charismatic adult, to describe that kind of person who's there for the kid to help them make the right choices. So I'm really concerned about that. And at the same time, I really strongly believe that families are the people who are primarily responsible for educating their kids, and that schools just support them as they need that help. And so ideally, every family has this wonderful situation at home where they have all they need and they can take care of their kids and there's no domestic abuse or anything like that. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. And so what I think teachers need to do is to focus even more on caring about the kids that are in front of them. that they have, that they call their students and talk to them on the phone and have conversations with them so that they feel that connection. Being one of 25 kids in a Zoom window, you don't feel that connection as hard as the teacher may try. And many teachers I know have done an excellent job with that. And so I would encourage teachers to take that extra step to call their kids, talk to them on the phone, make sure they have a one-on-one conversation with them so that they can have support. And that may even mean that you go and visit your students. When I was a principal in Kodiak, Alaska, we went and visited the home of every single student before school started, because it was that important for us to know that for us to show the kids that we care about them enough that we're going to come to your home and welcome you to our school, so that we know who you are, that we care about you, and that we're going to leave our school and come visit you. And in the time of COVID, going and visiting people, that's tough. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, if you show kids that you care about them, you show families that they matter, then you're going to be in a much better situation. And, I don't ever ask teachers to be counselors, but sometimes they're unfortunately thrust into that situation, and they shouldn't be counseling or trying to solve those problems. But what they can do is have honest conversations with people and say, man, it sounds like your kid is really struggling and he sounds really sad. What can I do to help? What support do you need? I can connect you with someone who can help with that. And resources exist, and teachers can have access to them for their families. And so they really need to spend even more time caring about their kids and really putting their needs first.
It's so important to put the needs of the kids first. And I can only imagine how many times teachers have been thrust into that position of, it's like, do I give advice? What do I do? Because you don't want this kid to go home and feel hurt. And God knows what's happening at home. It's kind of a difficult spot to be in. I know when I talk, kids are talking to me and I'm like, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not legally able to do that. I'm like, you can go over here and I'm here for you if you need me. But it's like, where's that line? And I think especially with bullying in schools, where's the line? How do they intervene? Is bullying happening more?
Well, I think the fact that we're not physically present is helping bullying in one regard and making it worse in others. The social media based bullying or the technology based bullying, I think, is increasing now more than it has in the past, because that's how we're communicating with everybody. So I think there are certainly issues there. Now, I want to go back a little bit and talk more about the parents and providing resources to them, and I'll come back to the bullying in a second, because I think that they tie in. As educators, we're afraid to have hard conversations with parents. And there have been times where I've confronted parents about them abusing or neglecting their kids. And I've said, I have to report this to the Department of Child and Family Services or whatever it is, because I'm a mandatory reporter. But I want you to know that I know what's going on. And I'm not, and, sometimes the kid has come and told me something. Sometimes I've just overheard something happening. And there was one time where I heard a parent tell a kid she was going to beat him when they got home. And I intervened and I said, hey, I heard you say this. I can't let that stand. I can't ignore that. So you're not in any trouble with me. Like, I don't have any power over you. I'm here to make sure that your kid is safe, and to make sure that they know that they're not going to go home and get beat. And the mom said, well, I'm not really going to beat him. I was just saying that. And I said, look, I understand sometimes you get upset and you say things that you don't mean, but I want you to know that I have to report this, and I'm going to, and this is what's going to happen. People are going to come. And, this happens all the time that we get reports. And the thing is I was saying, look, I'm not here to get you in trouble. You're struggling. You feel like you can't do this and that your only solution is to beat your child. That's not going to work, I promise you. So let's work together to find a way to get you support so that you have that support. And the reason why I brought this up after you asked a question about bullying is because we have to have the confidence to have those conversations, not in a counselor way, but in a teaching and learning way. How do we help the parent learn how to interact with their kid better? How do we help the kids who are bullying others learn how to interact with them better? And it's not about punishment, which is what we all go to first. It's about learning, because that's what schools are for. As soon as we start saying that schools are like safety is our number one priority, we're saying that learning is not our number one priority. And we can learn and be safe, that can happen, but learning needs to be the priority. And so that sometimes means that you need to have a bully still in the school so that they can learn how to interact appropriately. And that is a reality. They need to learn. It's not that they need to be punished, but they need to learn how to behave appropriately. And I think right now, especially with so many schools being virtual, yes, some are in session, but with so many being virtual, and so many kids interacting on technology so much more, we have to be proactive in finding a way to have those conversations and have those tough conversations, and not make it about punishment, but make it about learning, so that those people who are making bad choices can learn how to do better.
Yeah, people definitely need to learn how to do better. And I like that example you brought up, almost having like you have to have that bully in the school so the kids know how to respond, how to react, how to not be a bystander, and everything of that nature. So on the topic of that, and this is obviously a really awful topic, but it's in the limelight a lot, unfortunately, for obvious reasons. When you hear about school shootings and you hear about these kids that were so bullied and so isolated, and people are scared to send their kids to school. I mean, I live in Florida near Parkland-ish, and just I can't imagine the fear that parents have sending their child to school every day. What are schools doing? What is your school doing to prevent that?
Yeah, that is a horrible, horrible situation. Thankfully, I've never had a student bring a gun to a school and shoot anybody. I've had kids in my school threaten that, and we've had to deal with that, and that's really hard. Um, and and in a situation where that did happen, where a student did threaten, we we knew the kid, and we knew immediately that there was something wrong with him that day when he made that threat. So this was not a kid who would actually do that. And you always say that, but we knew him well enough, and this is where I think the key really is that we didn't need to be afraid of him because we knew who he was. And I can't speak to any of those situations where kids have done that, or kids who are now adults who were bullied in school and then went back and did it, or out of the school. I can't speak to any of those things, but in the situation that I've experienced, I knew the kid and I knew that I could talk to him because I'd built a relationship with him. And so in that situation, I knew that I had a way to have that conversation. I've had many students who have brought knives to school, and sometimes intentionally, sometimes accidentally. They left in their backpack after hunting or going out in the forest or something like that. And with every single kid that I knew and could have a conversation with, I wasn't ever afraid. With every kid where I didn't know them that well, or I had had negative interactions with them and hadn't been able to build a positive relationship, I was definitely afraid. And that's to me what the difference is. When you, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, when you care about kids first and foremost, and it's not about control, and it's about helping them be successful in whatever their skills and gifts and abilities are, when that's your focus, then you get to know the kids better and you understand them better, so that those types of things, I wouldn't say that they're less likely, but you feel safer knowing who people are. And that would be my big push for any school. You, as the adults in the school, you've got to know who your kids are, so that if something negative happens, you have a good understanding of how to react. I've also had students where I don't know any other way to say this, but they were crazy. I mean, there was something that was not right in their heads, and they made bad choices intentionally. And with those kids, yeah, I needed to be scared because I didn't know what they were going to do. And they weren't intentionally trying to hurt people most of the time, but sometimes they did. And so in those situations, those are still children who are still trying to learn. And it goes back again to helping them learn how to act appropriately, and helping them learn how to manage their emotions and their challenges appropriately. This is one of the scariest things that any of us can imagine. And I wish I knew the right answer, but the only thing that has helped me not feel fear in that situation is knowing the student. And when I know the student and know who they are and have a relationship with them, I have much more confidence that I can manage the situation.
Wow. What a great answer for such a difficult topic. I can't even imagine the fear that you must have felt, with some of those kids who, like you said, there was just something wrong. There's just something off. But knowing who your kids are is so important. And I think, especially now, kind of to wrap things up with COVID, we really need to hold on to that because, regardless, I mean, schools will go back eventually. And people, hopefully, I'm fingers crossed, I really hope, people will need to re enter that building relationships and being there for one another, and especially teachers. So, as a final takeaway or just bit of advice, what do you have to say directly to teachers?
I would say to teachers, remember why you came into the profession. Remember who that teacher is that inspired you, that made you feel like you could do anything. Find who that teacher is in your mind, and then do your best to emulate those positive qualities. And nobody's perfect. So whoever that teacher was, they had some flaws also, but do your best to emulate the best things you remember about them. And so, I think of a teacher who really understood me, who really cared about me. And when I got rejected from the only college I applied to, she wrote a letter saying, this kid needs to go to college. He needs to get into your school. Please admit him. And then they reversed their decision based on her. But she knew me well enough to see the potential that I didn't even believe that I had. And because of that, I've been able to be much more successful in my life because of her positive influence, because of her belief in me that was not earned or warranted or anything. She just saw something in me that I couldn't even see myself.
With that being said, it made me think of one more question. So, as someone who, struggled with building some relationships with my teachers, like I said, some were great. What advice do you have for the kid who's scared that, the teacher's just there to yell at me or to report, or they have like a weird kind of feeling about teachers? What would you say to change their mind?
If somebody's listening to this and is a student at that level, they're probably in junior high or high school at least, and they probably have multiple teachers with whom they have a possibility to connect. I would avoid and ignore the teachers that make you feel uncomfortable and find the one who can be your champion, because she's out there or he's out there. So go out and find them, because that person is going to make all those other problems go away, because that's the power that they have. But you need to go find that teacher who believes in you and go to that teacher and get support. That's what they want to do. That's what they love to do. And it will mean more than anything to them for you to allow them to mentor you in how to react appropriately. So I'd say go find that one teacher, because they're there. They're in your school. Every school has a bunch of them, and for every single kid. So the teacher who you are totally uncomfortable around, who you think is all about control, is that champion for some other kid who's not like you. So go find the teacher that can be a champion for you.
Well, Jethro, I think you are a champion for many and even for other educators. So thank you again for being on the show today. You were just truly wonderful and give great insight. So thank you again.
Thanks for the opportunity. This was great talking with you. Be bold, be you, be blatantly honest.